Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska, where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Thank you, Scott. Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard Must Read Alaska, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. You know, today it's Flag Day, and it's also Donald Trump's 75th birthday. I just think it's wonderful that those two things are on the same day, and it reminds me of that picture of him hugging the American flag on the stage. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's pretty hilarious. I hope everybody's showing their colors today. You know, these days it's so funny because an American flag can just trigger the left so hard. So be sure to fly it high and trigger away. And we just want to thank you to our President Harry Truman, who was a Democrat, who signed this into law so that the 14th of June every year is Flag Day. And it just tells you how far the left has gone since those days. Back in those days, Harry Truman was a good Democrat. He was a great president. And in 1949, he signed Flag Day into law. Today, you could never find a Democrat who would sign Flag Day into law. I want to just say we have a great guest on our show today, guest host Jay McDonald. He was on the show earlier this year to talk about some election irregularities in the 2020 general election. I am so happy that you're back with us today, Jay. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. It's going to be fun.
Oh yeah, and we need to do this more often because we have such a great back and forth. And Jay and I talk on the phone a bit, and it's always interesting because he's got super great perspectives and he's very, very smart. And we were talking before the show about what's going on with all the toxic level of politics. And I know I've never seen it so bad in my life. And of course, I'm quite a bit older than you are, Jay, but I don't know that you've ever seen it this bad either. It's so polarizing. It's so there's so much crazy talk coming from the left, and it's just gotten really ugly. I was just thinking, Monday is racist, this weather is racist, the PFD is racist, everything's racist, everything's just so toxic. And I know you've found that when you've gone door to door, that people are tired of it, aren't they?
Yeah, so I mean, we've all heard the comments, when I'm doing political work, going door to door, talking to normal people. A lot of people they're so frustrated that everything is it feels so hateful and so mean-spirited and so dysfunctional. And there's a perception among apolitical, average, normal day, voters that our politicians are more concerned with their own personal power than actually doing a good job and just getting the job of government done. And so I think that if we take a close look at the official Democrat Party newsletter, it could be a little bit enlightening on this particular topic.
Well, that's what caught our attention. And I'm really glad you brought it up because, the Democrats have a newsletter that goes out on monthly, every other week or something. And it is the most toxic newsletter you can imagine. It's so nasty, so mean-spirited, and it's just not the kind of newsletter that anybody would really want to open because it's so it's just kind of grotesque, and it's like drinking a bottle of Drano, and it's not professional, it's not focused on policy, it's really focused on personal attacks in kind of a vicious way.
Yeah. So especially these days, there's kind of roving gangs of people online that it feels like they'll go after just about anybody over like the most slight misspeaking or insult or comment taken out of context from years ago. And then while all this culture is going on, I've been getting these newsletters for a long time. Like, this is the official Democrat Party newsletter written by their communications director, and some of the stuff that they're saying in these things, it's kind of shocking to me. And like, I don't know what their distribution list is, but I really wonder if their legislative colleagues down in Juneau are aware of the things that are being said about them by Democrat legislators in the Democrat Party. So like a really great an example that is really amazing to me that I'd like to start on is the way that they describe Sarah Rasmussen.
Well, now,
Because
anyway, wait just a minute. Now, Sarah Rasmussen, she's a Republican, right?
yeah, so she's a Republican that, you know, you could say that she's got some progressive views on some things. But for whatever reason, she kind of identifies more with some people to the left of the aisle. And she's been a key member of the Democrat organization. She doesn't technically belong to their caucus, but she's been a key vote that's been holding them up and getting through a lot of the votes this session that have come down to just one. Like, she's the one person allowing them to organize, allowing them to pass a budget. If it wasn't for Sarah Rasmussen, they wouldn't be able to get any of their priorities done in Juneau.
So she's a little bit like Lisa Murkowski in that way, a little bit of a hostage taker on things, just kind of the last vote, make sure that her vote is the most important vote. And the Republicans really can't count on her for sticking with the team. She's not really a team player. And I noticed that she has a lot more friends in the Democratic Party. She and Zach Fields are really close friends, and she parties with a lot of the Democrats, basically. Yeah, so she's a little bit maybe like the Gabby Ledoux, the Lisa Murkowski type Republican. Okay.
So yeah, in the context of she's the key vote for Democrats on all of these issues, like here's how they describe her in the Democrat Party newsletter. So it says, "Where's Sarah?" is the headline on the paragraph.
Now what issue are you in? What year are you in here?
Okay, so this is from last October.
Okay.
Around election time. So it said, "Back in the good old days, it was a different Sarah who never wanted to be in Juneau. They even made buttons that said, 'Where's Sarah?' that legislators on both sides of the aisle wore around the Capitol, protesting the then governor's chronic absence. Well, now we've got Sarah 2.0. And they go on to describe her as, so she missed some votes for family reasons while the pandemic travel restrictions were going really crazy in full swing.
I remember that. And once she left Juneau to go to her grandfather's birthday, I think, she wasn't able to get back because of the pandemic. They actually shut everything down. She couldn't get back into the Capitol.
Right. So they rip into her over that. And then they have some fake quotes that they're attributing to her. I guess ironically or something. But again, like, this is the official newsletter of the Democrat Party, and they're making up quotes and putting them in quote marks and attributing them to her. And it says, "But wait, I had to go to my great grandpa's 100th birthday party in the lower 48 right before the busiest week and the most important votes of the year." And then they have like a little shrugging emoji.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, it goes down. She says, "Let's see what she's up to these days." And they have a photo of her with Jeff Lanfield in a hot tub.
Oh, so that's unfair. That was the year before, wasn't it? I mean, yeah,
right.
That's a really low blow, I tell you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it says, "What's she up to these days when COVID numbers are really spiking in Alaska? Hot tub parties with bloggers, apparently." And it's a photo of her. So like, I'm wondering if she knows how her good friends in the Democrat caucus talk about her behind her back, because I don't think that she's been reading these newsletters and seeing how they describe her.
Well, actually, I'm looking at this photo now, and that you sent to me from this newsletter, and it is from October 2020. So I guess it was right in the middle of the pandemic. But I mean, that's kind of a low blow. So what? I mean, this is just vicious stuff. And gosh, I hope we never stoop that low on our side. I mean, maybe we do, but boy, I don't know. It says here that like you say, they put quote marks around this paragraph as though she said it, which she didn't. She said, "I had to go to my great grandpa's 100th birthday party in the lower 48 right before the busiest week and the most important votes of the year. And then they wouldn't let me back in because of COVID. What could I do?" Well, that was true. She was stuck out of state. And even though maybe they do work 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, on the weekends, they do go home or they do go elsewhere. And let me tell you, great grandpa only turns 100 once in his life.
I really love the irony here that they're viciously attacking her for missing votes, when if that was true, if she was missing votes right now, then they'd really be in trouble. They wouldn't be able to get anything done in the Democrat caucus.
They need her now, don't they?
So I imagine that their position on her voting record has changed since then, but who knows?
Well, I know in the most recent newsletter, they seem to throw her a lot more love. They're not as, they just talk about what an important vote she is. So, in the most recent newsletter, I noticed they really go after David Eastman for his trip to Arizona when he went down to just observe the audit. I mean, it's certainly a good exercise. Is the audit legitimate? We don't know. But David Eastman probably knows because he went down and he took a tour. But apparently that's not good enough.
Well, so what they're doing here, they're using David Eastman as a vector to bring up this conversation, but they're really going after all conservatives, all Republicans. So this whole paragraph, it's so nutty that you can't really take parts out of context. You kind of have to read the whole thing.
Okay,
so they have a paragraph in their official newsletter. It says, Bamboo Hunter, according to election deniers, a super secret stash of Chinese ballots were filled out for Joe Biden in South Korea and then smuggled via airplane from Seoul right after the election to Phoenix, where they were somehow absorbed into legitimate ballots and counted. But Trump super secretly put a watermark on mail-in ballots to identify the fraud he just knew was probably going to happen. And the joke's on them, because if the ballots were printed in Korea, they'll have super secret bamboo fibers, which will identify them, and patriots with this kind of a run-on sentence here.
With magnifying
glasses and ultraviolet lights will prove, all quotes or all caps, that Trump shouldn't just be a civilian playing golf and fending off lawsuits. He should be the president playing golf and fending off lawsuits, or something like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that we could talk about.
That's sort of like drunk blogging right there. I mean, for one thing, they really have a problem with their punctuation and so forth. I don't know, I'm not one to talk, but this paragraph is a mess.
So I don't know any Republican in professional or casual circles that believes any of these things. And I'm really wondering who they're talking to hear this.
And who amongst the Democrats who get this newsletter actually believes that Republicans actually believe this stuff, that there are bamboo fibers printed inside the phony ballots.
So it's kind of discouraging, because they go on to say, David Eastman is not going to find fraud, but what he is doing is, and I'm quoting them here, they say he's undermining confidence in our election system.
Oh, well, that's really interesting.
So, it's really discouraging to see them say this for a number of reasons. First off, there's no confidence in our election system on either side right now, and that's not because of anything that David Eastman did. We just went through 3 years of Russia collusion investigations hosted by the left, and then there have been a number of people on the right that are upset with, and this is a fact, it's not an opinion, that the way that many of these states conducted their elections, for whatever reason, was not in line with state constitutions.
No, it wasn't.
It's kind of a major issue.
It's a huge issue.
Right. So if you're a legislator like David Eastman, or any legislator in any of these states, your job is to uphold the state constitution, and your job is to create a system that the public has faith and confidence in. So how do you do that? You need to look at what happened. You need to look at the audits, have audits, and figure out what happened, what worked, what didn't work. Go back, revisit legislation, and improve things so that going forward, we can have a system that everybody trusts, that works.
Yeah.
And then they're attacking him for doing that.
So I went to the Morning Consult poll in January, and I think I've seen recently that the number of people who have faith in our election system is actually sliding further, but only 33% of Republican voters say they trust US elections now. And that was actually a number that was down by 5% over the previous poll done by Morning Consult. Now, interestingly enough, in this poll, this was in January, 92% of Democrats actually thought the 2020 election was free and fair. So we've got a pretty strong divide, a strong difference of opinion about whether or not that election is free and fair. I am a Republican, and I looked at what happened after the election. I started, taking it apart and saying what happened. And attorneys general from all these different states got together and they got legislation passed across these different states to have all mail-in ballots because of the pandemic. So it's supposed to be kind of a one-off thing where everybody's going to get mail-in ballots. And that's what happened in many states where they just said, we're going to mail ballots to everyone. Now, they didn't do that in Alaska. What happened is our lieutenant governor said, listen, we're going to mail ballots to people age 65 and older because that's target market for this virus. And we want to make sure those people are safe. That got sued, remember, by the ACLU, who said, well, what about disabled people? What about other people who can't get to the polls? You should be mailing it to everyone. This was part of a national plan to try to get every state to do all mail-in ballots. It is so devious. But our lieutenant governor did not fall for that, and the courts didn't either. They said, you know what, we're going to allow the Division of Elections to run the elections the way they see fit. So the ACLU lost that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the ultimate authority to describing the form and function of these elections it's the legislature. It's the job of the legislature to create the system that we're going to use. And then the executive branch executes the plan that the legislature has given them. So as a legislator, if there's serious problems in the system, or if there's a lack of public faith and confidence in the system, you need to evaluate the process, find ways that you can improve it, and then propose legislation.
Your job. It's your job as a legislator to check this stuff out. He did a great service for us.
Right. And nowhere in this process does that entail any sort of partisanship, like bias or preference, or, any of those things. So it makes, you have to ask, if we've got a toxic influence that's being disruptive and not being helpful in this process and being hyperpartisan, who is it? Is it David Eastman and other legislators that are looking at what happened, what went wrong, and how can they improve things? Or is it the Democrat Party that is peddling these really wild conspiracy theories and viciously attacking people that are just trying? It almost sounds ridiculous to say it, but he's literally just doing his job.
Yes. How dare you question the results of this system? Now, remember, 2020 was a year when 19 out of the 20 bellwether counties voted for Trump in the country. So you had, and then there's only one bellwether county, it was Clallam County in Washington State, that voted for Biden. It was an extraordinary result. And I think that extraordinary results like that do deserve us to take a closer look and see what happened, because there were just so many weird little things. And then social media, of course, does apply a lot of crazy theories out there, that things that I don't believe. Also,
I kind of reject their whole framing of the issue, because you need to dial things back a minute. When you're talking about just auditing the process does not challenge or overturn results. You're just looking at what happened and how.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's no craziness happening there. It's just, we're doing an audit to see what happened and how it happened. And then if we come up with issues, then we've got information that we can move forward with.
And if not, my goodness, that should build confidence. So why not? The Republicans in Arizona, the Senate said, yes, we're going to go ahead and audit the whole thing. Unlike with Barbara Jones here in Anchorage, where when she says she's going to audit an election, she only audits a few ballots. She samples a few and says, yeah, that looks good enough for her.
Well, exactly. Like, if the Democrat Party's official position is that there should be more faith and confidence in elections, absolutely, I agree with them. And the way that you do that is by having a clear and transparent audit and showing people, like, here's all the evidence, everything worked exactly how it needed to, and there was no funny business. So why would you resist that?
Yeah, why? Well, because you are afraid that they're going to find something that looks irregular. And it sounds to me like there may be a few things they found that were irregular, maybe not enough to overturn that particular election in Maricopa County, but it sounds like that race is going to be tighter when the audit is done than it was before. Hey, but they do go on. They're obsessed with David Eastman. I got to tell you that the Democrats just think he's the most bizarre thing, and they go on about him, don't they?
Yeah. So they wrap up that little segment by saying, and let's not forget that David Eastman was at the Capitol in DC during the January 6th insurrection. Okay, so I would love to ask them, like, what are you telling us we need to not forget? Are they accusing David Eastman of committing some kind of crime?
Actually, he wasn't anywhere really near the Capitol. He was in the U.S. Capitol. That's true, and he went and heard the Trump speech. That's true.
Right, him and a couple million people.
Yeah.
Went to a Trump rally.
Right, and then they posed with a photo, and it says here he posted this photo that night after the rioting had taken place. What are they trying to infer here?
Well, he did have a flag in the photo, and he is a Trump supporter.
I see, yeah.
That might not be a crime yet, but maybe if you wait a little while, it could be in the future at some point. We'll see.
And you know, it's a lot of Alaskans went, and we know that the Alaskans who went to DC are now under a lot of pressure from the FBI that they're going to have to prove, some people are going to have to prove that they weren't in DC. They've been interrogated even though they weren't there. And then others who were in DC are having to sort of prove that they weren't in the building because they, like the couple down in Homer that were raided.
Yeah, that really incredible raid that happened down in Homer. And I'll just say as a side note, I was really discouraged to hear that their Constitution that was confiscated was returned unopened, because that might have been the only chance we had for those FBI agents to read the Constitution and see what was in it. So I'm a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, they just flipped through it looking for notes or looking for underlines or something that would prove that these guys were violent rioters, which of course is the Constitution doesn't support. But
that is probably the last chance that those FBI agents will ever have to see what's in the Constitution. They'll never have contact with it again, would be my guess.
Yeah, they swore to uphold it. I'm not sure any of them read it, but it's hilarious that they took and really Marilyn Huper, who got raided by the FBI, she said she'd found that Constitution in a box. It was just a box of some random stuff they had, and she's pulling it out. I said, we really ought to be reading the Constitution more. And so she kind of pulled it out and had it handy so that we're going to read this and refresh our minds on it. And that's what they picked up and said, aha, you were at the Capitol. You raided the U.S. Capitol. So, but the next topic on this newsletter is also kind of interesting. It's all about Gabrielle Ledoux and her indictment as interpreted by her Democrat friends, because they're not friends of hers anymore. Now that she's been indicted, she's back to being a Republican, I guess.
Yeah, so they make a really odd transition from basically saying that there's absolutely nobody should question elections, and if you do, then that's bad or something. But then they bring up the fact that Representative Ledoux is now indicted, I believe. Is that where she's at now? She was indicted?
Yeah, on 5 charges. But you raised an interesting point. So in the paragraph before, the Democrats say, how dare you challenge election results? And then they go on to talk about Gabby Ledoux as committing election fraud.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so it's kind of an odd choice of we're really just covering both of these topics in the same newsletter. It requires a little bit of they don't really mesh well together. But if you look past that, I love the way that they describe Representative Ledoux. So this is the Democrat Party in Alaska. They describe Gabrielle Ledoux. I'm going to just read this short little paragraph real quick. They say, Ledoux is a former Republican chair of the powerful House Rules and House Judiciary Committees, an attorney, and served in the House both as representative from Kodiak and later East Anchorage. And in 2019, she broke with her caucus on a budget vote to support a $3,000 PFD. So if you just heard that and you don't know anything about what happened or who she was or any of those things, you'd assume like, oh man, she's like a super Republican. Well, in reality, in her own words, Gabrielle Ledoux has always been a Democrat, and she ran as a Republican so that she could win office in Republican areas. And I'm not trying to disparage her or besmirch her character. That's how she describes her political career.
Correct.
And when all of these things happened, when she was the former Republican chair of the powerful House Rules Committee, that was her in the Democrat caucus in those positions.
she was the most powerful member of the Muskox caucus coalition, which is the breakaway Republicans who caucused with Democrats. Also, let us not forget that Gabrielle Ledoux is a Berkeley Democrat. She went to Berkeley. She's really cradle raised Democrat, and she was a Democrat in Kodiak. And then when she moved to East Anchorage, she moved to Anchorage. She looked around for what district would most suit her. Easiest to win in is the lowest performing district in the state. The lowest voter turnout is the Jay Bear district. Very Republican though, a lot of military people. And so she moved into that district and filed in that district 2 years later. She is a Democrat in sheep's clothing.
Yeah. So now that we know all that, the Democrat Party goes on to say, while Republicans are busy looking for voter fraud from China and hunting down an imaginary Democratic cabal of pedophiles trying to overturn a presidential election.
What?
We can, that's what they say. That I'm reading it up verbatim. This is the Democrat Party communications director putting this out in their official newsletter. They say, right. So we can all be comforted. They go on. We can all be comforted by the fact that when there is actual alleged voter fraud, even when it's a sitting Republican lawmaker, cough, cough, that's what they're saying, the system finds it and prosecutes it. So they throw in more really zany conspiracy theories that I don't have any idea what they're talking about with this Democratic cabal of pedophiles.
Well, how about Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton? Maybe that's who they're talking about.
I don't want to put words in their mouth. I would like it if the Democrat Party goes a little further and puts out a press release where they're clarifying exactly what Democratic cabal of pedophiles they're talking about. and how that factors into the presidential election, because I haven't heard anything about this and I really would like to hear more.
Yeah, like who are these Democrats that are pedophiles? Yeah, I'd like to get that information. Yeah, this is just crazy talk, man. And it's so then let's go on to this next piece where they absolutely bring out the acid wash for Christy Babcock. And they even go so far as to basically call her a nasty woman. Now, I didn't know that you could still do that. I thought the Democrats said nobody could call somebody a nasty woman, but they go after Christy Babcock with all the long knives.
Yeah, so if anybody doesn't know, Christy Babcock is married to Tuckerman Babcock, the former chair of the Republican Party. And this is a real inside baseball thing, but she was up for, she was nominated to be appointed to the Alaska Judicial Council, which, it's some real technical stuff about recommending people for appointments to the judiciary and this and that. It's stuff that only the most astute political observers even followed these kinds of things. So it was a little bit interesting of all things, for them to see the Democratic Party just really key in on and attack Christy Babcock in this situation. First off,
they did it because she's married to Tuckerman and they hate Tuckerman.
So the thing about this, Christy Babcock is a unique person. She's her own person. It turns out she is not actually the property of Tuckerman Babcock.
Seriously.
She does not share all of his views. She has her own opinions. She's an independent woman. And I'm not aware of anything that she's done for them to go after her. And they don't really make that clear. Like when they're attacking her, they don't mention anything that she's done in the past that makes them, so concerned about her and her record. They're just talking about Tuckerman. So when you're talking about the Democratic Party, I'd like to know what the rules are in these conversations. The way that they describe women like Christy Babcock, if we talk about Democrats in that way, rightfully so, they would be outraged. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how does this work? Why are you going after Christy? Why is it appropriate for you to target her and attack her in this way? And I'd just like them to lay out a set of rules that everybody can follow, because when they switch back and forth, it really, this constant gaslighting where they're going to viciously attack this woman in a very misogynistic way, frankly.
Truly.
But then they expect us to be hyper vigilant about, comments that people make on social media going back decades. It's hard to mesh those two stances on things. And it's difficult to understand how we're supposed to communicate with each other when the rules are so unclear. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned, they describe her as they say that she's a nasty woman, you know? So it's like
Yeah.
when
It's it's
they're channeling Donald Trump in their attacks on Christy Babcock.
which
And you could say, oh,
is
well, if it's okay with you when Trump said these words and used these things,
mhm.
then we can do it too. Well, it doesn't actually work that way. If you want us to be upset when Trump does something and then you're going and doing the same thing, I want you to lay out the rules. Why is it okay when you do it? Why is it not okay when he does it?
Right. Well, and just so listeners know, Christy Babcock advocated for a certain judge from Kotzebue to be appointed to the bench of the Supreme Court. And it was Paul Roteman, who has been a judge out in Kotzebue for a long time. Now, he is Hispanic and he serves in a rural area. And the Democrats are calling him a right-wing extremist judge. And so I don't know where to go with that. He's Hispanic. He serves a rural area. Nobody's ever called him a right-wing extremist judge before, but this is what the official word, the official label from the Democratic Party is that he's an extremist judge. And so Christie was advocating for him because she had just gone through this nomination process where they had criticized her because she wasn't from rural Alaska. She's from Kenai, Soldotna to be precise. And so Soldotna wasn't a place that they wanted her to be from. They wanted her to be from, off the road system in Nome or Diomede or someplace else. So she did get through on her own merits, and it was a fairly close vote, but she's on the Judicial Council, and then they're in the process of picking the new Supreme Court justice to replace Justice Bolger. And she advocated for Paul Roteman, a rural judge from rural Alaska. But boy, they just went nuts on him, and they went nuts on her.
This is where it comes in, like the really confusing, the shifting goalposts, the shifting standards. When she was up for confirmation, they said that she absolutely should not get it because rural representation is our priority. Mm-hmm. And then so she ended up getting appointed for various reasons. And then she says, okay, well, if rural representation is a priority, I have a preference for this judge. And that's what they're attacking her for. Like just a moment ago, the people that said the rural community member we need to have that representation. That's our priority. That's the standard that they gave her. And then when she ran off of that and she endorsed this person who met those standards that were given to her by the Democrat Party, then they're viciously attacking her, calling her a nasty woman.
Mm-hmm. These guys are incredible. So this newsletter, how do we get on the list of it? Can anybody get on the list for this newsletter, or is it for special people or what?
It's for very special people who go to the Democrat Party website and sign up for their newsletter. Because again, all of these things are official communications published by the paid professional official Democrat Party communications director. So if you want to hear all about how Sarah Rasmussen is hot tubbing with Jeff Lanfield and Democrat pedophile cabals working the presidential election, then sign up for the Democrat Party communications director's newsletter, and they will tell you all about it, I assume, at some point in the future. Maybe who knows what we can find next month in the next edition.
Well, we're going to do this again, and I really appreciate you being on the show. This has been so fun to go through this newsletter with you. It's just it's really something that I open up now and then, and I just look at it, I shake my head, and I think the writing is okay, but it's just so caustic. It's so nasty. Does anybody ever really read it? And people
I would encourage everyone to sign up for this newsletter, and I would encourage them to read it when it comes out, and then as they're reading it, to think in their mind, who's the adult in their room? Who's the person that's being toxic? Who really wants to make things better, and who's making things worse? Are these people uplifting the political dialogue and the conversation or not?
Oh, heck no. Heck no. So everybody, before we go, if you really want to get a good newsletter, go over to mustreadalaska.com and sign up for the Must Read Alaska newsletter. Now, I am not the official spokesman for the Republican Party. I am just an independent writer, and it's an independent newsletter with an independent blog attached to it. And if you go there, during the legislative session, you'll also get the Club MRAC, which is the legislative report. Now we're kind of past that now, but we'll start that up again in January. And also tune into the show midweek for the Must Read Alaska podcast, which is always hosted by Scott Levesque, our midweek host show expert, and he is doing a great job on that. And Scott, you're gonna have so much to talk about this week because the PFD is front and center on everybody's minds. And if you're a supporter of Must Read Alaska, thank you so very much. You're the one who makes it possible for us to stand up for what's right in Alaska. So if you'd like to help us out, go to the donate button on the right side over at mustreadalaska.com, and we'll keep staying strong and independent and thoughtful and showing the liberal activist news media for what they are. Until next week, everybody, we're signing off from somewhere in Alaska.